how do we get those who are sitting on the sideline of education and training back into the right types of programs in whatever duration those are, short-term or full degree programs that really help the community grow.
Hi, I'm Steve Plum, Editor-in-Chief of SMA Media, here today with Deb Volzer, Vice President of Workforce Development for SME, and we're both at NAMRC 54 at Penn State. Thanks for joining us today, Deb. I know you just got off a panel discussion. Being that NAMRC is such a technology-oriented event, what are some of the obvious ones like AI and automation, but how are they impacting workforce, upskilling, and the job market?
No, that's a great question, and it's something that the panel discussed today. And it's kind of twofold, Steve. When I think about it, it's how do companies invest in new technologies? How do they find them out? How do they, integrate them into their incumbent training? But also, how do they work with their education partners and community-based partners to make sure that training then accommodates the new technologies that are, integrated into their systems? A couple of things that we discussed is that the small to medium-sized manufacturers have a much more difficult time of integrating those new technologies. And so when you think about the makeup of manufacturers in a local community, you have to kind of adjust your training plans around whether or not they have multiple different types of processes or technologies, and then meet the needs of those businesses where they are. And so that to me seemed like the most dramatic change. Obviously, there was a question around whether or not automation or the integration of AI is going to take people's jobs. I mean, that seems to be, and consensus from our panel of experts is that it actually increases jobs. It elevates the role of the human in the process, but it takes away a lot of those menial tasks or repetitive tasks that can be done through automation. So increasing productivity, but then it creates all of the other jobs for maintenance and for programming and everything that you would need to do around that. So in fact, it's actually increasing opportunities at a much more intellectual level for the human interaction.
So I imagine a different skill set, and are you finding that students are coming out of college or high school even with some of that knowledge, where they're AI natives or have worked in some sort of automation, and is that attracting them more into manufacturing?
I do. I think manufacturing still suffers from not a kind of a negative perception, but just a lack of perception. I think students just, especially in that, thinking about that K-20 kind of pipeline development that needs to be invested in, where you're starting out with that awareness at those early ages and then building the skills as they go along. I think that's where we need to get to. We're not there yet. Yeah. Those, though, that are more digital natives, obviously, once they see that there are opportunities for highly technical skills inside the manufacturing, ecosystem, they're more interested in pursuing them, but I think we still have that disconnect of, just that awareness of opportunity, and then, continually aligning those programs and making sure that industry is getting who they need and what they need. But more importantly, the thing that I heard from this panel and actually from the audience and what we hear all the time is that it's not only those technical skills, it's the soft skills or those executive functioning skills. And even talking to two employers that I visited with after the panel session, their concern was still retention. Is how do they get somebody in the door, get them trained, and even with incentives where it's like, once you meet a 3-month or a 6-month or a 9-month time, we're going to increase your pay. That doesn't always just keep an individual, showing up every single day.
And with the soft skills, how is technology impacting that? You hear stories about kids being on their phone all the time, and what types of soft skills do they need immediately to get trained up on?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wouldn't say I'm an expert in it. And however, what I've heard is, some of the soft skills, if you think about it, communication skills. So you think about being on your phone all the time, actually being able to communicate effectively with another human is a barrier. Time management, but more importantly, as we see AI and data decision making, impacting our workforce, you have to have students that can understand data, can interpret data, can make decisions, and think about it from that ethical standpoint of decision making as well. So, it's soft skills of just showing up on time, but also being curious, being mindful, being, making those decisions that are impactful for not only themselves but for the business that they work for.
So another part of the equation, the workforce equation, is retention. People are leaving a lot more frequently, so how can employers attract people to stay longer, and what are the key benefits that people are looking for these days?
Well, I hope we figure that out soon, because I think businesses are really, our industry partners are really struggling with retention as an issue. I think they have to, this next generation of learners has to feel valued inside of those four walls. They have to be heard, they have to be, I think our companies need to, while still getting production out the door, I think they really need to understand the wants and needs of and values that this next generation of workforce brings. And so being able to tap them on the shoulders, understand what would make the job better for them, maybe new opportunities or better ways of doing things. I think if companies could spend a bit of time doing that, they might see increased retention. I think some of it is looking at better models, apprenticeship programs. If companies could get them earlier and really train them along the way, so there's a learn and earn, so that then creates a value system between the employer and the employee. And so those are kind of opportunities that I think would help us with retention along the way.
Have you seen companies becoming more receptive or active in terms of apprenticeships?
I do. So we're seeing it whether it is a registered apprenticeship, whether it's pre-apprenticeship, whether it is just an earn and learn program. There's all kinds of names and models out there. I think that is what we are seeing as the best. An individual, especially an adult learner, who can't just step away from a job and go back and pursue their education and training. They have to put food on the table. So having an earn and learn program where they can learn on the job, they're getting paid, the more skills that they acquire, the increase in pay, and they really feel like the company's investing in them.
So we're here at Penn State. It's a mixture of academia and industry that are here at NAMRC. How is industry partnering more with the colleges or the trade schools or the high schools to help get students ready for the workforce earlier?
Yeah, I think that is continues to be a challenge on both the education side and the employer side. I think there are incentives that both state and federal policy around education are helping to maybe solve for that, but really the bottom line is we have to get industry and educators speaking the same language and making sure that we understand their demand signals, which is sometimes hard for them, but we also have to understand, especially our community colleges, our universities, our technical colleges, understanding their demography, understanding who's outside their four walls, who hasn't come in yet, and then how to make sure that programs align to their needs, whether it be funding issues, transportation issues, childcare issues. How do we get those who are sitting on the sideline of education and training back into the right types of programs in whatever duration those are, short-term or full degree programs that really help the community grow.
Do you see much regional difference in how, whether it's from a regulatory standpoint or from approaches that different manufacturers or different universities are taking that have been more successful than others?
That's a great question, and while there are proven practices out there that I think institutions and states are starting to adopt, we'll see, obviously you see this administration really putting a lot of emphasis on apprenticeship programs. I think we're going to start seeing states also assisting in the efforts to bolster those because they are proven practices. I think we're seeing states that are looking at policies. One thing that we should discuss is that you have to have qualified instructors, so CTE faculty. That is a problem across our nation, as we don't have enough CTE faculty. That a lot of those, they would stay in industry because the pay is just a different rate. So how do we make sure that we're bringing in the right instructors, building that instructor pipeline up so that we then can serve more individuals, which hopefully will help solve the problem. And we're seeing states that are starting to do tax incentives for industry to put a faculty on loan. So you're getting an expert inside the classroom, and it's also supporting then that wage gap between the two occupations.
But it's a moving target, whether it's technology or people's expectations, other factors going on. In your position, you work a lot with a lot of different companies. What are some of the focuses for SME in the next year or so?
Focuses for SME, one is to bolster up. I know, thinking about it from our federal partners and our federal investment, really bolstering our defense industrial base and making sure that we have qualified, individuals to fill those roles. That impacts our national security first and foremost. I think the other thing that SME is really going to lean into is really building that continuum, that K-20 continuum. Mm-hmm. How do we make sure that there are stepping stones all across that education system? Because not only do we have to fill the jobs now with the adults and those coming out of high school, but we have to build that long-term pipeline, and we have to sustain that long-term pipeline for manufacturing. It will continue to change. I think SME will stay on that forefront and making sure the right technologies, the right training, the right events to bring people together to really share those best practices will continue to be at the forefront of that.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.